Is Karen Williams, and this is Wendy Wonderly, and that's mostly for anybody that might watch us online and wonder who we are. But I thought with A Course in Miracles that we're going to talk about prayer, and one thing that we haven't done, Wendy and I, up to this point, is actually read just the Course itself and then stop and talk about it. Now, Tana and I belong to a Zoom group that meets twice a month from 6 to 7 o'clock, and they just pick up wherever we are in the Course and read it and then talk about it, and then when the hour have a little meditation, and then that's the end of the night. And so if I'm in town, I always join in at Tana. So if you ever are interested in joining that group, if you don't mind, Tana can give you the contact for that. And so I thought, that would be perfect for us as we cover the Song of Prayer. That the Course, you have a workbook, you have the workbook lessons, one for every day of the year, and then you have the text, and then there are some other supplement parts, and one of them is called the Song of Prayer, which is the first section that we're going to go over, and then it has some other clarification stuff. And then I wanted to mention too that this is the blue book. There also is a purple book. And so that class, or that Zoom class, predominantly uses the purple book. As you can tell, I'm kind of in favor of the blue book. And this is my old friend. I have the purple book. And what the difference is that this is one that was edited. So when Helen and Bill, as I mentioned this morning, that they, for 7 years, pulled this together, a man by the name of Ken Wapnick. He's now passed away, as all of them have, and he served as an edit. So a lot of in the purple book was the original dictation that Jesus was, as Helen was channeling it, he was actually talking pretty specific to her, and she had some resistancy, and at one point she would dictate things and change words. And Jesus, and at one point, I think Helen just asked, is there something I should change here? And then he just said, well, yes, there is. That you've changed some things. And of course, it was just her resistancy at hearing a voice and interpreting it. Wasn't anything wrong with it. But so if you do get a sense of where there's different versions, one's better than the other one, this is the one that actually Helen and Bill approved in publication from the Foundation for Inner Peace. So that's the difference. Trust me, if you pick up either one and begin to grasp the concepts in the Course in Miracles, it will certainly help you on your spiritual journey. So I thought, well, we'll just jump in and talk about prayer. And this particular section is where it's talking about the different levels of prayer. And before Unity service, I love to hear Phyllis. Phyllis actually nails it, in my opinion, of understanding the highest level of prayer, which is really a communion that you have with God that says, hey, I'm not going to be asking for a bunch of stuff. And basically, Jesus says to Helen at one point, it's okay to ask for stuff, but maybe we can put it up a level. Maybe you can get beyond that. So that's kind of more the lower level of you're just asking for stuff, and then it goes into, and then you are actually thinking you can pray for your enemies. Well, there's no enemies in the Course in Miracles. Everybody's a part of you. There's only one of us here, which is the concept, which means every time someone and everybody around you is that's coming from your own consciousness. And they're helping you in those lessons that we need to learn. And so therefore the message really is forgiveness, which isn't necessary from God. We have nothing to be forgiven from. God just thinks we're sleeping. So there's no sin, there's no guilt, there's no shame. He just thinks we're sleeping. He, she, it, whatever, just thinking we're sleeping. But the Spirit is always there with the truth, as I mentioned in today's message, to just gently kind of wake us up. And so you can't really be praying for your enemies because you're really praying for yourself. So that's a concept. And forgiveness is only in this world. It's the way to help us to get to that higher level. And then there's the next level of where you're beginning to pray with others. And in that sense, it's like Wendy and I belong to the prayer circle, if you will. I'm not even sure what we call it here at Unity, but once a week, Wendy does a fire ceremony, and anyone who has put in a request here from Unity of Bloomington for prayer, we present their names as part of many people we do all over that we're involved with all over the world, actually. But we're not like the mediator. That's not what it's about. It's not like there's God, and then there's people requesting prayer, and somehow we're mediating. No, it just means that we're just taking everybody's asked a prayer request, and we're lifting them up as we lift ourselves up to that highest level of communion. So that's what we're going to pack out reading this, okay? Or that's what we're going to talk about as we read it. So, do you have anything else to add to that? Okay, and I just wanted to I think I wanted to read this, from Myrtle Fillmore. Prayer, as Jesus Christ understood and used it, is communion with God. Okay, this communion, and this is from the founder of the Unity. This communion is an attitude of mind and heart. It lifts the individual into a wonderful sense of oneness with God, who is spirit, the source of every good and perfect thing, and the substance that supplies all the child's needs, whether they are spiritual, social, mental, physical, or financial. And she herself had some tremendous health issues and was able to cure. I mean, God basically was saying, hey, you're already perfect. You think that you have these issues, but you don't. And when she got into that mind, then she was able to heal her body. And so it's Unity, I think, is the foundation of at least all New Thoughts, if not all churches, or spiritual centers, about prayer, because their outreach into, they call it, I think, silent unity, where people all over the world every day can call a number, and are going to be prayed for.
I was going to ask you why they call it the Song of Prayer, but under True Prayer, paragraph 2 sort of explains it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's listen in this introduction then. Somebody want to read just number 1?
Prayer is the greatest gift with which God blessed his Son at his creation. It was then what it is to become. The single voice creator and creation share. The song the Son sings to the Father, who returns the thanks it offers him unto the Son. Endless the harmony, and endless too the joyous concord of love. They give forever to each other, and in this creation is extended. God gives thanks to his extension in his Son. His Son gives thanks for his creation in the song of his creating in his Father's name. The love they share is what all prayer will be throughout eternity when time is done, or such it was before time seemed to be.
Okay, thank you. So you're grasping, I mean, there's a lot packed right in that, which was, hey, prayer, it's not so much you're praying to God is as much as you're sharing a consciousness of God. That kind of goes nicely with what I was trying to present this morning, is that you're sharing that consciousness with God. You know, and most people think about prayer. I mean, they are asking for stuff, right? It's kind of like a lot of traditional prayer is, well, God, I just want you to know this is going on in my life, and I really don't like it, and I'd really like you to do something about it. And then it's like, well, keep praying. Oh, because I don't quite see the way that I thought it would get resolved yet, so I'm asking again, and do you hear me yet? And that I trust that you're going to take care of it, but I've got it all figured out exactly the way I want it done. I mean, This is a very different consciousness here, right? There's no stuff in it yet. It's just, I'm going to share that mind with God. Okay, read number 2.
And we've all been there.
And we've all been there, yeah, yeah. And it also says, and I just need to point out, I'm kind of making fun of it a little bit because, frankly, I can. But I just want to point out, no prayer is bad. Even a simple help. Every prayer is a thought, and every thought is answered. Okay? And so no prayer is bad, ever. But there are higher levels. Number 2, somebody read number 2 for us.
You who are in time a little while, prayer takes the form that best will suit your need. You have but one. What God created one must recognize its oneness and rejoice that what illusions seem to be separate is one forever in the mind of God. Prayer now must be the means by which God's Son leaves separate goals and separate interests and turns into holy gladness to the truth of union in his Father and himself.
Yeah. Now, most of the time, when you pick up the Course in Miracles, that most people have to read it and then they have to read it again. Right? I mean, so part of what I'm going to try to do is interpret it a little bit, just so that when you go to read it, but it's quite beautiful. But what's our one need? This here paragraph's talking about we have only one need. It says, you have but one. Well, what is it?
To be the mind of God.
Right. It's to, yeah, God. God is our one need, right? So our oneness with God also gives us a lack of any kind of need. And that's an important thing. It's saying when you're one with God, when you're in that consciousness of God, you need nothing. Sounds very coursey, doesn't it? You need nothing. Why do you need nothing? Because you're in the consciousness of God and you already have everything. And so that's where this is coming in, saying our oneness with God gives us a lack of need. And our prayer then is to help us know then that we're not separate from God. Because you'd only think you had needs if you felt like you were separate from God. But if you know you're not separate, you can't be separate, how can you have any needs? It doesn't have anything to do with now take care of yourself and respect it, what you need in this world. Yeah, that's all understandable. But you see how the very consciousness of the Course, or the very teachings of the Course, is always about you thought you could separate from God. It's an impossibility. How can you separate from all that is? So what you are is sleeping. And you're sleeping and you're having this dream, and the Course of Miracles calls it an illusion. Because it's just a dream. And what's so interesting is physics, if you start following, if you have a little bit of interest in science, and you start following what's going on with quantum physics, quantum mechanics, that science itself is actually coming out saying that the world's an illusion. That these chairs and everything actually do not exist. It's only as you look at it in our collective kind of consciousness, but as we look at it, we make it a useful tool. And if you follow what they're saying, of course they say it in a very scientific, way, and don't talk about it as this is God, but it's like you're just sleeping. And it's going to be so interesting to follow the teachers that are just going to come right out, and the scientists are going to come right out and just say, it's an illusion. It wouldn't be here if you didn't look at it. So it's kind of like you leave your house, you drive away in your car, and you come to Unity, your house disappears. There's no house there till you get back there, and then you're in the drive and it reappears. I mean, science is beginning to prove these. It's an amazing thing to live in the time when the science is actually going to prove what the Course in Miracles said in 1975.
Are we going to have to change our definition of illusion? The definition we've had of illusion over the last, well, my 70 years?
I'm not sure how you mean that, but,
How do you
Well,
define illusion?
my definition of illusion is something that we see that's not really there.
right,
Um,
right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, I may
That's
have
exactly,
answered my
that's
question.
exactly what it is.
I may have answered my question.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And you only are seeing it with your dualistic eyes, and because you're focusing on it, and it's a useful utility to have a chair to sit in, the chairs are here.
Because we think we have bodies, and so we've got
Right.
to do stuff with the bodies.
Right, right, right. And when you get to it, it's like it's really moving us into, wow, you know, the mind of God. I'm not talking about the brain, I'm talking about the mind of God, that it really is well beyond within us. It's really all around us, too. And it's that part of that consciousness that never dies. Some people will call it your soul, some others will call it your spirit. And that's where that concept is eternal. Your body fades away, but your spirit will go into a different dimension. So yeah. So it's going to be fascinating to listen, I think, to science if you're into that. They don't need to prove it to me. I know it's an illusion. I've seen things happen in this world that, like I talked this morning, that's just not in this dimension of the 3D dimension. At least it's in the fourth dimension, because I still have a body. So depending on how you define dimensions, the fifth is, you know, when you die, and then you're in a higher even dimension. Randy, you have something to add to?
Yes, please. It is so fun to hear you say these things because, as for me, my aspect, my mind is grasping this in small bits and pieces. And I recall reading something that says, well, we used to say, well, you only use 10% of your brain. And we kind of realized that, well, sure, maybe, but if you look at it from, you only use 10% of your mind. If you're only now just starting to grasp, and you're here at the beginning stages of this 10%, oh my gosh, how much more greater is this level of awareness going to be as you expand your mind to say, oh my gosh, I'm now using 20% of my mind.
Exactly.
And so I so look forward to this expansion of the illusion, kind of like you say, disappearing. That unified field, the universe, everything as we talk about unity, is amazing for how this is coming together and starting to gel, if I may, in our lifetime. And some people talk about, the second coming of Christ. Well, this is the Christ consciousness that is evolving, and it is so exciting to be in the flow of the stream.
Exactly, right. And it's so interesting because even in astrology, we're kind of moving out of the age of Pisces, which is where when Jesus came on the scene, and into the age of Aquarius. Now you can get people saying, well, that's still not 400 years away. Some say, no, we're in it now. But the reality is, whenever there's a change of the zodiac kind of sign or the ages, then there's always disruption that happens. Well, look at what's going on today. So that it's not going to be the end of the world, as some people will talk, but it is an end of an age. And you can see it in the Bible too, actually, when Moses comes down from Mount Sinai and he sees that the people have taken all the gold and made a golden calf. And he's quite upset about that, and he actually destroys the tablets with the 10 Commandments. But what he was saying is no, we're moving from the age of Taurus, the bull, the calf, into the age of Eris. And that's why in the scripture you'll get them blowing the ram's horn. I think the Jewish term for that is the shofar, right? The blowing, he's saying, hey, it's an end of an age. He was coming down with laws because that's what people would understand, the 10 Commandments. And then they get the age of the ram in Eris, and then Jesus comes along and says, no, don't take all those laws. Let's go beyond those laws. So he was saying, hey, we're moving from the age of Eris now, into the age of Pisces, and now we're moving into the age of Aquarius. So it's about every 2,000 years that happens, if you follow that kind of astrological sequence that astrologists will talk about. Well, no wonder we have so much stuff going on. What happens? People want to hold on to the old stuff. What they do to Jesus? Hey, we don't like what you're talking about. We want to have our laws. We want to have this authority over people. Therefore, don't be talking about a Christ consciousness. We need people to obey and follow the laws. So we're going to kill you. And he was saying, there's no death. You can kill this body. He's not going to kill me. You know, and you see that. And of course, moving into Easter time, it's a perfect, kind of thought. He's saying, no, you resurrect from what's dead. And the consciousness lives on. So anyway, that's a side note. That's a freebie. It's not even in here. Sorry.
Since the dawning of the
Exactly,
age
exactly.
of Aquarius.
I just
Exactly.
wrote the note, look at the lyrics for Age of Aquarius.
Yeah, exactly.
This is it.
Okay, the next section here. Lay down your dreams. What are your dreams? Your dreams are false idols. They're your wanting stuff. You, holy Son of God, and rising up as God created you, dispense with idols and remember him. Prayer will sustain you now and bless you as you lift your heart to him in rising song that reaches higher and then higher still until both high and low have disappeared. Faith in your goal will grow and hold you up as you ascend the shining stairways to the lawns of heaven and the gate of peace. For this prayer, and here salvation is, this is the way. It is God's gift to you. Wow. So poetic, so beautiful, really. So prayer is reaching God. Prayer is a consciousness. It's our thoughts matching God's thoughts, that when we have it, we are not separate from God. And what is he always saying to us is, you are worthy. You are created in my image, meaning you are as I am. It's an extension of a thought of love. It is an expansion of consciousness. But if we don't get that, then we're always praying for stuff. And a lot of the prayer is, just make me worthy. Well, you're already worthy. But if you know it, I am as God created me, then I will to be the servant, the Christ, the light, the love on this. And that's, the Course constantly is saying that. I am as God created me. I am worthy. I am deserving. So that was this morning's too. Seek first that consciousness, and everything is added to you. Why is everything added to you? Because you already have everything you possibly could need. But it doesn't mean that if you want stuff, you got to give it up. You got to give up the wanting. It's in the consciousness that when you get there, that you already know you're abundant. Then you begin to see how you are abundant, and then it gets added, and it gets added, and it gets added. God has no problem giving you stuff. He has only that you're attached to it. Because see, if you're attached to it, there's no guarantee that it's going to stay. It's not. It's going to die. He wants you to know you're not going to die. Every need is going to be met. And then you get to a consciousness of, I need this. I don't know where this will come from. I could tell you story after story of rabbis and others who have just said, I don't know where this is going to come from, but I'm going to walk my day and it's going to show up. And I think if we had time, you could share stories of how that has happened in your life. You didn't know where it was going to come from, and all of a sudden it does. And on the other side of it, Wendy and I have been in situations where we are the ones to provide the gifts. And I'm sure you have too. My uncle is buried in a cemetery in Indianapolis. And I'd never had gone there. It's just a small cemetery. And we were going to spend a weekend in Indianapolis as tourists, which we did. And I said to Wendy, I want to just go to this cemetery and see my uncle's, stone. So a little cemetery, not even an acre, hardly. It was not very big at all. And I just couldn't find it. But then they had a plaque honoring any veterans, and his name was there, Lawrence Legg. Well, okay, that's my uncle. So I knew he was there, but I couldn't find it. So after both of us searched around, and I mean, actually just going up and down, you know, doing everything you can to try to find it.
It was a little cemetery, but it had a lot of graves.
Yeah, yeah. So we did that, and then we just left. We went on and did our business. And then the next day before, I think we were on our way home, I just said, you know, I'd really like to just go there again and stop and see it. And so Wendy had, for some reason, had something to do in Target. She said, well, okay, I'm gonna drop you off, and but call me if you find it, and I'll come back and pick you up. So she drops me off, she takes off on her way to Target, and then I found it 10 minutes later. Called her up, she turns around, picks me up. Then we both go to Target. She goes in Target to get whatever it was, and then I get approached in the car by a woman, mid-age, who was trying to get something for her kids. And you know, I've been in social service my whole life, you know, and I've heard every story possible about how I ran out of gas, some of it true, some of it not true, but you kind of have to go with, is this right for me or not? But for this woman, I felt, yeah, okay. And I said, well, what about tomorrow? Which probably wasn't helpful to her, to be honest. But it's like, you know, you got to think about having a place beyond just today, you know. So anyway, I gave her some money, and then Wendy comes out, and she tells me that it was,
I was,
well, tell the
there
story.
was a family in front of me, small family, and they were trying to make a purchase, and they didn't have enough money, but there was a language issue, and they just weren't getting it. So I just said, oh, I'll just pay for it, because it wasn't, they were $20 off. I'll just pay for it, and that got interpreted as I'm going to pay for the whole thing, which was fine. So maybe there wasn't I don't know. But, so I did that, and I'm on my way out, and the father comes over, and he was just tears in his eyes and everything. It's like, yeah, this was good. And I get out to Karen. I've got this great. Wait, I've got this great.
So it was kind of an expensive trip to Target for us. You know, but, and this happens to you too, you know. I mean, but sometimes you're the one, and you just know, how can I help you today? Or even if you don't even get a sense that they might need help, it's just like, here, you deserve it. I've had waitresses and waiters, you know, that at the end of, I don't know, our meal that we split, not because we can't afford the whole meal, but
We can't afford the calories.
we can't afford the calorie count of the whole meal, whatever it is, and then tip as much as the whole meal is, you know, but, and some are taken back by it, and but you deserve it. You deserve it. See, you just become the messenger. That's what I'm saying. And all of you have been there before. But all of this is saying we're not separate from God. Not at all. And everything is added on if we have that kind of consciousness. Okay, Wendy, why don't you read number 1 under true prayer?
Prayer is a way offered by the Holy Spirit to reach God. It is not merely a question or an entreaty. It cannot succeed until you realize that it asks for nothing. How else could it serve its purpose? It is impossible to pray for idols and hope to reach God. True prayer must avoid the pitfall of asking to entreat. Ask rather to receive what is already given, to accept what is already there.
Okay, it's not merely a question or an entreaty. What does entreaty mean?
Please.
Yeah, an earnest kind of request, right? Yeah. And then true prayer must avoid the pitfall of asking to entreat. So whether you're asking anxiously.
It's a plea or begging,
Yeah.
more than just asking a question, it's like really asking a
Right.
question.
And so it's saying avoid the pitfall of asking to entreat or asking earnestly or anxiously to do something. And why is that? at the end, it says, to accept what is already there. What's already there?
Anything you should ask for.
Yeah, yeah, God's presence, right? I mean, you're already, there's no separation. So you're not asking, because you already got it. Yeah. Someone read number 2.
You have been told to ask the Holy Spirit for the answer to any specific problem, and that you will receive a specific answer if such is your need. You have also been told that there is only one problem and one answer. In prayer, this is not contradictory. There are decisions to make here, and they must be made whether they be illusions or not. You cannot be asked to accept answers which are beyond the level of need that you can recognize. Therefore, it is not the form of the question that matters, nor how it is asked. The form of the answer, if given by God, will suit your need as you see it. This is merely an echo of the reply of His voice. The real sound is always a song of thanksgiving and of love.
So there again, go ahead and ask for stuff, but go deeper if you can. And what's the song? The song is the goal, not the
Thanksgiving
echo of
and
the
love.
song, right? The song. Yeah. So ask for the deepest aspect of what God is and fill yourself with that presence of God. And you don't even need the echo of the song. Beautiful. Someone read number 3.
You cannot then ask for the echo. It is the song that is the gift. Although along with it come the overtones, the harmonics, the echoes, those are secondary. In true prayer, you hear only the song. All the rest is merely added. You have sought first the kingdom of heaven, and all else has indeed been given you.
Okay, again, go to God first. Seek the consciousness of God first. I talked about that this morning. And the Course in Miracles also says, that we know not our best interests. If you're doing the lessons, that was fairly recent, that you do not even know your best interests. We think we do. And we try to define that and say again, okay, God, now take care of this problem with this person or coworker, or resolve the situation of not having enough money in the bank, whatever it is. And we think, but we do not even know our best interests.
Can we back up just a minute? In number 5 and 1-4, it says, you cannot be asked to accept answers which are beyond the level of need that you can recognize. So what I'm getting from that is, if I lost my job, like the guy we were talking about this morning, I lost my job and I asked for a new job, that's the need that I recognize. But where if I were to ask for, the best finances or the best job for me or the best thing to do with my time, that's more than the level of need that I recognize at the moment. And that's really what we should be doing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Beautifully said. Absolutely spot on. Right? And Jesus is really saying here, in the channeling that Helen got, was, but don't expect people that don't have that consciousness to be there. They're just wanting a job. But if you can move beyond that and really recognize what's really good for you and what's going to be the best for you, and that's where it comes into, you don't know what your best interests are. But if you're willing to say, show me, guide me, direct me.
Let me see this as you see this.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful, yeah. And so that's kind of the pleading that we do with God, that people do with God. Like, oh, no, just get me out of this jam, I mean, a lot of times it's, I got a coin, I put it in the vending machine, maybe I done a couple good deeds. All right, now I'm going to get rewarded. It's so much more, so much more.
So this can remind me all about the quantum manifestation. So what in quantum mechanics is what we see is already here. All the money we want, for example, is already there. What we need to do is to manifest it. It's already there. We just need to manifest it. And how do we manifest that? We connect our inner self with the God.
And then you will have everything that you need without us defining what that need is. Because ultimately, we don't know what our best interest is, but you do, God. And it's also willing to say, no matter what's happening in the present moment, I'm going to trust it is for my good. It's a whole different consciousness than what people have, though. Because people say, well, how's that good? Look at, you lost your job. You lost your marriage. You lost, it's all loss and scarcity. And it's just the journey. But if you're willing to say, guide me, direct me, God, then you'll have a wonderful, either relationship or the job that you want, and things will all be taken care of.
When you were talking today during service, you talked about the truck driver. In my mind, I was seeing you chasing after him. Saying, but. That was what I was seeing.
Yeah. No chasing, just no chasing at all. It was really, I wasn't doing anything with him. He was just bringing a consciousness to me, saying, you know what? You still have some parts in you where you feel like you're not deserving of the good. You still feel like, you have to control or manipulate in order to get your way, or whatever it is. There's still a little unworthiness or undeservability or unlovability, whatever it is, and you get down to those wounds. And then I think, well, no, not, my consciousness was, thank you for bringing that up. And I'm going to keep healing it. And every time it comes up, I'm going to heal it. And do the best. Doesn't mean I'm always going to be there 100%, but I'm willing to learn. But yeah.
I'm glad you didn't chase him.
No, I didn't chase him. Yeah.
When she told me that story, I saw this, in my mind, I saw this this guy, and everyone just sort of stepping away from the crazy person.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what happens usually. Everybody just kind of ignores them. Yeah. Okay.
Do we have something to say?
Oh, yeah.
When you commented on that, I saw a contrast where the person was holding himself and not allowing the abundance that is there.
Right.
And when we get to see and hear and feel when somebody is in resistance, I use it as the reminder of saying, yes, you can hold yourself in a state of resistance and not allow the abundance to flow through. And therefore I say to myself now, oh, that's right, there are times I'm holding myself in resistance.
Right.
When that phrase of you will deny me 3 different times before the cock crows,
Right.
I have found myself saying, oh, that's probably where that Jesus Christ mindset is, where I'm not allowing it to flow through. I feel as though I'm not worthy. Therefore, I have denied.
Right.
And I go, oh, there's that reminder again.
Right.
So I appreciate when I see people in a state of contrast, because it gives me that juxtaposition of a thought process saying, I can be there, I can be there, and I can be in between. And I appreciate that that person is there. And I really wish for them that they would open up and say, I don't need to hold this level of resistance, because that's a lot of work to hold that what God's putting at you.
Yeah, right.
Yes, there's that abundance if you want it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Prayer is a stepping aside, a letting go, a quiet time of listening and loving. It should not be confused with supplication of any kind, because it's a way of remembering your holiness. So why should holiness entreat, being fully entitled to everything love has to offer? And it is to love you. Wait. And it is to love you. You go in prayer. Prayer is the offering and giving up of yourself to be at one with love. There's nothing to ask because there's nothing left to want. The nothingness becomes the altar of God. It disappears in Him. So in quietness, God answers. Everything is answered. Every problem is quietly resolved. That's what it's saying. And you're using then prayer as an affirmation of that truth, that everything is done. Read number 6 and 7.
This is not a level of prayer that everyone can attain with as yet. Those who have not reached it still need your help in prayer because their asking is not yet based upon acceptance. Help in prayer does not mean that another mediates between you and God, but it does mean that another stands beside you and helps you raise you up to Him. One who has realized the godness of God prays without fear, and one who prays without fear cannot but reach Him. He can therefore also reach His Son, wherever He may be and whatever form He may seem to take.
You want to keep going? Number 7.
Praying to Christ in anyone is true prayer because it is a gift of thanks to His Father. To ask that Christ be, but Himself is not an entreaty. It is a song of thanksgiving for what you are. Herein lies the power of prayer. It asks nothing and receives everything. This prayer can be shared because it receives for everyone. To pray with one who knows that this is true is to be answered. Perhaps the specific form of resolution for a specific problem will occur to either of you. It does not matter which. Perhaps it will reach both if you are genuinely attuned to one another. It will come because you have realized that Christ is in both of you. That is its only truth.
Okay. Any comments on that?
I didn't quite understand paragraph number 6. Does not mean that another mediates between you and God.
Yeah.
That's what Karen just
Yeah.
mentioned about the prayer
Yeah.
request, right? Is it
Well, it's when you're, say I get sick and Karen, please, dear Lord, make Wendy be well. That's the kind of prayer it's saying. I mean, it's better than not praying because you are entering into some sort of communion, but it's not the most effective way to go about it.
So it's kind of, you're not the mediator. In other words, you basically, you're not standing between another person and God. Instead, you are lifting them up with you and you're seeing them as God would see them. That's the great prayer.
I think a lot of traditional fundamental Christianity also teaches that you can only come to God through Jesus Christ.
Right.
That Jesus has to be the mediator between you and God.
Right.
And you can't do anything directly to God. You have to go through Jesus.
Exactly.
The Mormons definitely teach that. I
Right.
think there was a lot of that in the Catholic Church, at least the beginning as well. It's not as much now. But you had to go to the priest in order to pray to God. You couldn't do it yourself.
Right.
I think that's what it means by having a mediator.
Right. Right. And that's a great example because that's exactly what they've done and said, that you have to go through, that Jesus then in the fundamental Christian church is your Savior. The Course in Miracles says you don't need saving. So you don't need a mediator. Your salvation is knowing who you are as God created you to be. So you don't have to go through anything. It's just, when I think of Christ, I think of him in the consciousness that he had a universal consciousness of understanding himself completely divine and completely human. So for me, he's a teacher because he's an example. If you can move away from what churches actually are teaching in their theology that's potentially harmful to people. And again, I believe there are wonderful, wonderful Christian people who sincerely have found a way through their church. Bless them. But the Course is very much saying that you don't need that mediator, nor did Jesus. Jesus never said, now you have to worship me.
But sentence 4 says, but it does mean that another stands beside you, helps to raise you up to him.
Right, in other words, because we're not there's only one of us here. So if we're seeing other people, the whole concept is you can't go home alone. That we are taking everyone with us.
Another stand.
And so that's where we're standing. It's a higher level of prayer when you recognize everyone is going with me. So when I have a prayer for someone, I'm really praying that they too understand in their own way the consciousness of God. I'm just lifting them up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
When two or more come together,
right,
it's much stronger.
right, right.
There's a song that Threshold Choir actually sings at bedside of people with, who are dying, basically. The only lyric repeated over and over in several different melodies, but is we are all just walking each other home.
Exactly. That's beautiful. That's true. We're always, yeah.
We are all just walking each other home.
And some of them that are helping are those that we would consider as our enemies. In the sense of, because what they're able to do is give us the contrast that helps us in our minds, if you will, teaching us that we are all the same. I mean, you take somebody and as we read through this, think of a politician that you do not care for. Not mentioning any names. And it's like, this person, not to be named, I could very much see behind a jail cell. And the Course in Prayer is saying, you're either putting yourself in the jail there with them, or you're releasing them. But you're there with them. And that's the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially in the context of what you just said.
right. It's a tough one. But that's and what it's saying is I'm looking beyond really the person, and I'm seeing the light that is in them and in everyone. And it can be really difficult to see.
It's a cunning light in there.
Yeah, it's a very dim light,
I'm
but it's
sure
there.
Phyllis will remember this, but we had Laura Lane who was here, and she brought a picture of the person I'm thinking about, that everybody knows. And she was explaining to us how we have to find love in Him, the way that we have love in ourselves. There's got to be something in there that's lovable. And she was like hugging this picture. And I was in resistance of doing that with it. But now I understand what she was trying to say.
Yeah.
That I can never find anything good about that person, but he is a child of God.
And another way that's complementary, and that's the best way to do it, Patty, but another way, if you can't quite get there, is to recognize that everything that comes across your awareness that you are projecting.
Exactly.
That mirroring concept that we've talked about a few times. So you couldn't see it if it wasn't already in you. And Karen's, Ho'oponopono, oh, there must be something really slimy in me to be seeing it out there in you.
Yeah,
So, okay, all right, thank you, I love you, please,
And you go through that process to bring you to the point where you realize it's a self-realization of, I am divine, I am holy, I am deserving, I am love, I am peace, I am comfort, I am strength, I am
sang a good
abundance.
song about that earlier.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the process is, you don't deny it and you don't fight it, but you recognize it. And in recognition, and we've taught here before, the part of that whole soul level healing is you recognize it. You might have something hidden behind it. Say, well, where did that come from? Maybe there's something else that needs healed. Release it, surrender it. It's kind of like a cup that's full with ugliness, and you empty it, and again, then you have the empty vessel. but you need to fill it. What are you going to fill it with? You're going to fill it with, you too are the light of God. You too are the love of God. You too, you know, and then thank you, gratitude, 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 gratitude. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay, the ladder of prayer. Now we're going to move into the lowest level of prayer, and that's basically, as I said before, praying for stuff. So somebody want to read number 1 and number 2 under the ladder of prayer.
Prayer has no beginning and no end. It is a part of life, but it does not change in form and grow with learning until it reaches its formless state and fuses into total communication with God. In its asking form, it need not, and often does not, make appeal to God or even involve belief in her. At these levels, prayer is merely wanting out of a sense of scarcity and lack. These forms of prayer, or asking out of need, always involve feelings of weakness and inadequacy. It could never be made by a son of God who knows who he is. No one, then, who is sure of his identity could pray in these forms. Yet it is also true that no one who is uncertain of his identity can avoid praying in this way. And prayer is a continual prayer, and prayer is as continual as life. Everyone prays without ceasing. Ask and you have received, for you have established what it is you want.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear. You know, you're asking for stuff because you don't understand your identity. You think you need stuff. And this is kind of the vending God, you know, the vending machine God. I need this, I want you to give me this. And it's saying, you need not even a belief in God. But the reality is, you know, that if you think you need something, then you're going to be praying that way. But you don't need anything. And you don't even need to know that you don't need anything. You don't need to believe in God. You don't need to believe in your own identity. It doesn't change anything, is what it's saying. It's saying the truth is still the truth. And but if that's all you can see, then that's where you're going to be.
I have a couple of thoughts that are recurring to me. One of the thoughts that I have is that what does God need? And my mind will always come up with, God needs nothing. Absolutely nothing. God has everything already, therefore God has no needs. The other thought that I'd like to interject on myself is, I am God, just as each one of you is God. And when I say to myself, okay, I am God, and therefore God also has no needs, I don't have any needs because I already have everything. And if I have everything, there's really nothing I need to pray for except for one of gratitude of saying, this is great. Thank you very much. I already have everything I need because I'm God and God has no needs. For me, that's a circular thought process that
Right.
I thoroughly enjoy. It's fun to read these truths coming out and saying, oh, confirmation.
Right. Yeah.
So my question or challenge would be then, how do we reconcile this concept? Because I fully accept it, and I try to remind myself as often as possible. At the same time, like for example, I need to hit the target for this month for the business.
Right.
You know, so how do we recognize this? I mean, you know, there's a reality there, or a goal there that I try to reach, but at the same time, you know, in my spiritual self, I said, well, I don't need to do that. You know, I already have everything. Just relax. Things will come. And sometimes I get caught in that middle. It's like, should I do it or not? Should I just go or not?
And I think you're well on the way because you have the awareness, and you're almost, you know, it's like you're almost laughing at it. Well, why do I think I need to do this when I already have everything that I need? And that's good. And the thing is that we're not all completely ascended yet. So we do live mostly more than we'd like to in this three-dimensional world. So know the truth that we're not really here in these bodies, but respect the illusion. So you wouldn't, for example, walk out in front of a car saying, well, this is all an illusion. So we have to kind of make some concessions to function in the world, but to keep reminding ourselves of that we don't really need this, or how funny and ridiculous it is that we think that we're these tubes of flesh and whatnot. Is one way to go about it.
God has no other way to experience life here on earth other than through you. These experiences that you are going through are part of the process, and enjoy the process because you're giving God the opportunity to experience life through you. And the game that you're playing is one of your business, and great, thoroughly enjoy the process because you're giving God the opportunity this experience. And that's what God appreciates, is this life experience on earth that we're all giving Him.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add to that is you may, in all of us, and I appreciate the practicality of, here are goals and here are targets. And for me, as defining, the bank defines it as successful meeting those targets and so forth. But you want to make sure you're not attached to the targets and the goals either. It's an attachment. Oh, I'm not successful if I don't make this. If you're willing to step back and say, oh, I know that we could exceed these targets, God. Nothing's impossible. Go back to this morning's kind of talk. However, I seem to be a little attached to them. So maybe I can give you my attachments, and I'll just sit quietly and willing to now listen for guidance and direction.
God, help me see this as you see this.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the only other thing I would add to it, is that sometimes we're attached to certain things, and we're all there at different times. Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, that's
That's what got me into trouble. It was like, how do I sometimes just get stuck there?
and just forgive yourself.
And that's kind of the next paragraph, I think, really talks about, every thought's a prayer. The lowest level of prayer, obviously, is praying for stuff. And then we can even feel guilty because we want this stuff. And then there it's talking about then move into forgiveness then. Your own forgiveness for wanting this stuff. To free us. That's why we do this. So someone read number 3.
It is also possible to reach a higher form of asking out of need. But in this world, prayer is imperative, and so it must entail levels of learning. Here, the asking may be addressed to God in honest belief, though not yet with understanding. The vague and usually unstable sense of identification has generally been reached, but tend to be blurred by a deep-rooted sense of seeing. It is possible that at this level, to continue to ask for things of this world in various forms. And it is also possible to ask for gifts such as honesty or goodness, and particularly for forgiveness for the many sources of guilt that inevitably underlie any prayer of need. Without guilt, there is no scarcity. The sinless have no needs.
So
This just answers.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Your prayer was answered.
There we go. Nothing else needs to be said. Absolutely.
That's a good one. Without guilt, there's no scarcity.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because that's where all the guilt,
Right.
like, oh, you're not productive, oh, you're
Right.
too lazy, or you're procrastinating, and all that.
Exactly. Right. And that's where you get back to, well, where did that come from? Well, as soon as I think I'm separated from God, then I begin to feel guilty and ashamed for having separated from all that is, and I look for somebody to blame for that, causing my problems, right, or self-blame. And it's ridiculous because you can't separate from God. And once you do think you're separated, then you feel guilty. And then the other part about it is you start blaming somebody, and as soon as you begin to attack somebody, you're always afraid because you're going to get attacked back, right? At some point, you're going to get... So then you're scared, and you think, oh, now God's going to punish me. I mean, that's how it goes. You know, it's like separate from God. Now you're guilty. And if you're guilty, guess what? You're going to jail. You're going to get punished. And so it always comes back to, no, 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 no. That's not at all who God is. That's not who you are. Be free of that. Be free of that. So prayer is a consciousness, and we can use prayer then to restore our minds, restore our souls into righteousness or into the right kind of consciousness. That's all that means, the right thinking. And God's intent is then that we not have any enemies, instead that we live a life of peace and love and joy. And that's what we're going to move into. So somebody read 4, 5, and 6.
At this level also comes that curious contradiction in terms known as praying for one's enemies. The contradiction lies not in the actual words, but rather in the way in which they are usually interpreted. While you believe you have enemies, you have limited prayer to the laws of this world, and have also limited your ability to receive and to accept to the same narrow margins. And yet, if you have enemies, you have need of prayer, and great need too. What does the phrase really mean? Pray for yourself that you may not seek to imprison Christ and thereby lose the recognition of your own identity. Be traitor to no one, or you will be treacherous to yourself. An enemy is the symbol of an imprisoned Christ, and who could he be except yourself? The prayer for enemies thus becomes a prayer for your own freedom. Now it is no longer a contradiction in terms. It has become a statement of the unity of Christ and a recognition of his sinlessness. And now it has become holy, for it acknowledges the Son of God as he was created. Let it never be forgotten that prayer at any level is always for yourself. Ooh.
Yeah.
If you unite with anyone in prayer, you make him part of you. The enemy is you, as is the Christ. Before it can become holy, then, prayer becomes a choice. You do not choose for another. You can but choose for yourself. Pray truly for your enemies, for herein lies your own salvation. Forgive them for your sins, and you will be forgiven indeed.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So number 6, start, the sentence, let it never be forgotten that prayer at any level is always for yourself. It gets back to, again, because there's only one of us here.
What you do for the least of them, you do to me.
So we're not praying to change a challenging person to be unnamed that may be in jail. But we're praying to change the feelings and the judgments that we have about that person within ourselves. See? And it's our feelings and it's our judgments that are putting us in the prison cell with them. And when we can free ourselves from our own judgments, we then are beginning to see the Christ in us and the Christ in anyone that we would perhaps call as our enemy. And that's the benefit. All are free. I mean, really think about it. If you had no one in the world at all as your enemy, nobody's out to get you. I mean, how freeing that is.
But you don't get to call down the wrath of God on somebody. It's given up a lot there, Karen.
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah. And there's no wrath in God. I've always said that God, if you go into the courtroom, God is there. He's the judge. Every time it's innocent, innocent, innocent. And people say, well, doesn't the Bible say, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord?
In the old iteration.
Right. And it could be. And you know what he's saying? He's saying, you got vengeance, you got vengeance, you got vengeance, you got vengeance, you got vengeance. Give it to me. and then poof, it's gone,
I ran across one of my,
you know?
the beginnings of one of my songs that I started to write several years ago. And basically, it's my God is not a jealous God.
Right.
My God is not a, da, 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 you
Right.
know, all negative
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
My God is a loving God.
Right.
And I think I'm gonna finish it at some point, but I ran across it the other day, and I went, yeah, I probably need to work on that one. But it was that, addressing that very thing, you know, my God, the one that I call God, the one that I worship or communicate with,
Right.
because I don't like that worship word, the one I communicate with is not that old iteration of the vengeful God.
Right.
It's a loving God.
Right. Exactly.
God is but love, and therefore so am I.
Exactly.
You.
I
Yeah.
heard a quote Wednesday night, and I really liked it. It's, I am God, dreaming I am not God.
Yes.
Exactly. Beautiful.
Say it again, I didn't
Yep.
hear it.
I am God, dreaming I am not God.
Right.
I am
I came across
God,
that one,
send
that
me.
was great.
I'm dreaming that I'm not God.
Oh.
I am God, but dreaming, exactly. I'm asleep though. I'm, you know. And the Course in Miracles makes kind of a big deal about, hey, Adam fell asleep in the garden and he never woke up. That's what the Bible says. And they point that out pretty
There's a
vividly.
line to your song, Phyllis.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. God is good and I'm the extension of that goodness. And if you have a God that's not that, it doesn't work for you. I mean, it's just your feelings of judgment upon yourself, and that's what this is saying. Your prayer, as you're always praying, but you're always evaluating yourself. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on here. I do have a little note. I'll just read it. Let me say, all forms of prayer are good. You're a child of God. Calling out for help is a start. The lowest level is a plead with God to fix the problems, and then we often tell them how we want them fixed. The higher form is, despite the way things look, all is well. It's a very affirmative prayer and a certainty that in the name of Christ, in the name of Jesus, whatever works for you, I'm claiming the goodness. I'm claiming my right, that I am as God created me, and that's what I am. So, someone read 7 and 8.
Prayer is a ladder reaching up to heaven. At the top there is a transformation much like your own, for prayer is part of you. The things of earth are left behind, all unremembered. There is no asking, for there is no lack. Identity in Christ is fully recognized as set forever, beyond all change and incorruptible. The light no longer flickers and will never go out. Now, without needs of any kind, and clad forever in the pure sinlessness that is the gift of God to you, his child, prayer can again become what it was meant to be. For now it rises as a song of thanks to your Creator, sung without words or thoughts or vain desires, unneedful now of anything at all. So it extends as it was meant to do, and for this giving God itself gives thanks. God is the goal of every prayer, giving it timelessness instead of end. Nor has it a beginning because the goal has never changed. Prayer in its earlier forms is an illusion, because there is no need for a ladder to reach what one has never left. Yet prayer is part of forgiveness, as long as forgiveness itself, an illusion, remains unattained. Prayer is tied up with learning until the goal of learning has been reached, and then all things will be transformed together and returned unblemished into the mind of God. Being beyond learning, this state cannot be described. The stages necessary to its attainment, however, need to be understood if peace is to be restored to God's child, who lives now with the illusion of death and the fear of God.
Okay, so you're getting a sense of the laddering of prayer here going on? That at the lowest level there is, we're praying for stuff, and then now we're going to move into praying for others, and then it moves into, praying for others, and then it moves into praying with others, and then the ladder ends, which means the highest consciousness, which is communion with God. So that's where this is taking us. But it keeps taking us back, right? Don't you feel like, hey, you read it, and then you read it again, and you read it again, and that's what the Course does. I mean, it's just slowly, it's integrating within, and you're beginning to get the idea. Okay, I'm getting it. And here where it says, God is the goal of every prayer, given it timelessness instead of an end. And then it says, number 2, nor has it a beginning, because the goal has never changed. How many of you remember in the Course, it is a journey without distance to a goal that's never changed. So that's a concept of the Course. You are in heaven. You are there with God. You're dreaming you're separate from God. And you're having this human experience as a spiritual being. And the whole point of the experience is to wake you up and recognize where you are. So you're on a journey without distance. You haven't gone anywhere. And the Spirit's just gently, hey, sweetheart, don't you think it's time to wake up?
Is that part of the timelessness? The journey stuff?
Well, after the journey.
Okay.
Yeah, that God is the goal of every prayer, because every prayer is sometimes a thought that you have. And that when you actually are just connected, and all your thoughts are of love, all your thoughts are of peace, all your thoughts are,
Oh, definitely mine are.
yeah, then you've ascended, basically.
When
In this-
you are literally a thought in the mind of God.
Right, right. You are a thought of, and then at some point, after you do ascend, you may not even have that thought or consciousness, is what we think of thoughts and consciousness. It's probably just a feeling. We don't know. I mean, to be honest, we don't know.
Unity.
Yeah? Yeah. Okay, now we're going to get into, okay, you're moving beyond just asking for stuff into praying for others. So somebody read number 1 and 2. We'll finish
You
this
said
bit.
that prayer is always for yourself, and this is so. Why, then, should you pray for others at all? And if you should, how should you do it? Praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting your projections of guilt from your brother and enabling you to recognize it as a... Oh, shoot, lost myself.
It's okay.
Enabling you to recognize it is not...
Yeah, not he.
Not he who is hurting you. Sorry.
Right.
The poisonous thought that he is your enemy, your evil counterpart, your nemesis, must be relinquished before you can be saved from guilt. For this means is prayer, of rising power and with ascending goals until it reaches even up to God. All right, I think well, let's stop there.
Okay, somebody want to read number 2?
The earlier forms of prayer, at the bottom of the ladder, will not be free from envy and malice. They call for vengeance, not love. Nor do they come from one who understands that they are calls for death, made out of fear by those who cherish guilt. They call upon a vengeful God, and it is he who seems to answer them. Hell cannot be asked for another, and then escaped by him who asks for it. Only those who are in hell can ask for hell. Those who have been forgiven and who accepted their forgiveness could never make a prayer like that.
All right, Phyllis.
Okay, if you've got stuff to say, go ahead and say it, but I
Nope.
really have some questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, praying, in number 1, verse 4, praying for others, if rightly understood, becomes a means for lifting your projections of guilt from your brother. I mean, I get calls every now and again, and you two do too, as part of the prayer team for here, for somebody to pray for them because they're going to undergo surgery, or, they were in a car accident, or, whatever the reason, but it's to lift them up to God. And I don't see how there's a projection of guilt in that.
It's
I don't get this.
it's you you couldn't see, and you're aware of this issue in them because you are projecting it, and you are projecting it because you have guilt in the most purest form of the equation.
Okay, I'll have to think about that.
Yeah. So basically, you wouldn't see sickness.
Okay.
In
So
the
why
purest
does
forms,
silent
you don't
unity-
see sickness.
So why does Silent Unity pray for people?
Well, because we are lifting those who think they are sick and that think they are in this body. And we're lifting them up to a consciousness that says you could not be sick. You
Okay.
can't lack anything.
And we
That's
see
the way I
And you're
see it.
only
we see them
totally
that way.
whole.
That's why I see praying for somebody else, because it doesn't have anything to do with projections of guilt.
Well,
From your brother, listening to projection of guilt, for some reason there's a projection of guilt, whatever the interpretation is, and now you're lifting these projections so they're no longer weighing down on that entity.
and it's all also like, okay, somebody's really sick or has cancer or, something. You wouldn't go up to them as a Course in Miracles and say, you don't have a body. What do you mean? You can't be
Stand
sick,
up.
right? Even though you know that in your consciousness, as you read and ascend in your consciousness, you know there's no sickness, there's no scarcity, there's no lack at all. But what you do is you lift your brother up.
And you try, another way to do that is to see the Christ, to see the light in them, and nothing else.
By the way, I've asked for these prayer requests just to give a name and not the condition.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a lot healthier for all of us.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing about it is that we all, hey, I'm dealing with this. Again, know the truth, but respect the illusion. Take the pill, get the surgery, get yourself the best you can. And the reality in this life, you got to die of something. You know what I mean?
It just seems really negative
Yeah.
towards that.
Yeah.
I also think when you're asking for prayer, and you're asking for prayer of the community or prayer for something that's happening in your life, it might be the only expression that you have when you write that down about the condition of the person that you are praying for or that you are hoping is not as destitute as they are. So I think that there's a place for that, and I do think that you keep that in mind, but as you said before, you lift them up to a higher level, because they're not at that higher level.
Right. Exactly. Right.
That's well said.
And it's just saying that, the judgments that we have are ugly. They're all from, sickness, scarcity, conflict, war, anything is fear-based and ego-based. And the Course makes no, some people say, well, the ego is your friend. The Course is very clear. The ego, the thing in us that edges God out, is never our friend at all. So I think some of the very strong language that comes out is, no, it's vicious. It's vicious. Because soon as it gets you to believe that you are, scared, that you have lack, or that you don't have health, or that you're not worthy, or you're not deserving,
You're just not connected to God.
as soon as you give it, just a little bit of power, it just wants to expand, 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 expand. Or it just wants you to deny God. It's happy to keep you in spinning, spinning, and spinning, just in disbelief or denial or rejection. Or you can just have your happy life, try to make the best of it, and get by. The ego's fine with that. Just doesn't want you to wake up.
It's all part of the game now.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay, we're going to move along because we're running out of time here.
No.
Okay. Where did we leave off at, Wendy?
We just finished 2 under pray for others.
Okay. Even the joining then is not enough. If you pray together, do not ask before all else, what is the will of God?
Where are you, Karen?
Oh, am I not on the right?
Page 4.
Page 4?
Where did we leave off? Page 4.
Yeah, you're at top 5,
Uh,
and in the next section.
This is, where's
Mm-hmm.
page 3, page 4. There you go. Yeah.
Oh,
So that note right there.
well, I was hurrying us up. All right, sorry about
We
that.
forgive you.
Okay, I just have a little note here that our lives are a mirror of our life thoughts. People are acting our stuff out, which we've talked about. Prayer then at the highest level is learning to heal that stuff with our brother, and praying only then for good things. So at these levels, then the learning goal must be recognized that prayer will bring an answer only in the form in which the prayer was made. That is enough. From here, it will be an easy step to the next levels. The next accent begins with this, or next ascent, sorry. What I have asked for my brother is not what I would have, thus have I made of him my enemy. It is apparent that this step cannot be reached by anyone who sees no value or advantage to himself in setting others free. This may be long delayed because it may seem to be dangerous instead of merciful. To the guilty, there seems indeed to be a real advantage in having enemies. And this imagined gain must go if enemies are to be set free. So why is it helpful to have an enemy?
It is.
You get to blame them.
You get to blame them, right? Ultimately, you're right, Phyllis. But in this case, if you make an enemy, the advantage you have is then you can blame them for your problems. And that's what it's saying here. Rather than your own self-judgments.
Or remind yourself of what you don't want to be, or to be part of your life. You say, I know what I don't want, I know what I do want.
Exactly. Guilt must be given up and not concealed, nor can this be done without some pain, and a glimpse of the merciful nature of this step may be sometime be followed by a deep retreat into fear. For fear's defenses are fearful in themselves, and when they are recognized, they bring their fear with them. Yet what advantage has an illusion of escape ever brought a prisoner? His real escape from guilt can lie only in the recognition that the guilt has gone. And how can this be recognized as long as he hides it in another and does not see it as his own? Fear of escape makes it difficult to welcome freedom, and to make a jailer of an enemy seems to be safety. How then can he be released without the insane fear for yourself? You have made him your salvation and your escape from guilt. Your investment in this escape is heavy, and your fear of letting go is strong. So again, our feelings, if we can blame someone, then there are problems, and then we don't take the responsibility ourselves. All right, number 5. Somebody read that?
Stand still an instant now and think what you have done. Do not forget that it is you who did it, and you can therefore let it go. Hold out your hand. This enemy has come to bless you. Take his blessing and feel how your heart is lifted and your fear released. Do not hold on to it, nor unto him. He is a son of God along with you. He is no jailer, but a messenger of Christ. Be this to him, that you may see him thus.
Okay, again, you release him, you release yourself. Of course, just keeps coming back again and again and again. How many ways to say the same thing? And then says it in just enough little difference to really just build it, build it, build it. And I noticed with the workbook lessons, I was laughing that we went through the first review now, if you're doing the lesson for the year. And now it says, oh, and now, okay, everything we've done up to this point, 2 months into it, right? If you started it in January and you 2 months into March, and it says, okay, now you're going to really start taking some advancements. You know, you just have to laugh at it. It's like, oh, okay, because I thought that was pretty deep, the stuff I just read. And it's like, oh, no, we're just going to keep advancing you.
Here's what came to mind for me, if I may. Forgive us of our trespasses to the extent
Exact-
that we forgive others of theirs.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the classic prayers. And Jesus, absolutely. Right. Okay, let's finish up number 6 here. Wendy, you want to read that?
It is not easy to realize that prayers for things, for status, for human love, for external gifts of any kind are always made to set up jailers and to hide from guilt. These things are used for goals that substitute for God and therefore distort the purpose of prayer. The desire for them is the prayer. One need not ask explicitly. The goal of God is lost in the quest for lesser goals of any kind, and prayer becomes requests for enemies. The power of prayer can be quite clearly recognized even in this. No one who wants an enemy will fail to find one, but just as surely will he lose the only true goal that is given him. Think of the cost and understand it well. All other goals are at the cost of God.
Okay, yeah.
Fairly steep cost, I would say.
Yeah. And it just keeps coming back over and over again that what you're really praying for is God's presence in your life, His goodness, His love, His joy. And if you start to pray for, oh, I want to win the lottery, He's saying you don't even know your best interests. Because you could win it, but if your consciousness isn't at the point of being able to handle that kind of wealth, you're going to have people coming in from the woodwork. And statistics have shown people who have won lottery end up in worse financial situations often after having won. It's that kind of concept.
Can you repeat what you just said? You said what you're really praying for is
God's presence.
God's presence.
God's presence. Yeah. It's the same thing with, praying for a partner because you feel like you're lonely and you need someone. Well, then you're always praying, you see, to hold on to them and not let them be free. Well, that's not going to work well for you. They're going to go. I mean, they may not physically leave you, but they've left you in some ways because people, it's not serving your best interests. And so that's part of what it's getting at. And then there's a section on praying for others. Praying with others, right. And that was the whole concept of, because we don't have time, we're going to wrap this up, but that we're praying, we're, again, lifting people up with us is the whole point. And then we go into the latter ends. And somebody want to read just that first number 1 under the section 5, the latter ends.
Prayer is a way to true humility. And here again, it rises slowly up and grows in strength and love and holiness. Let it but leave the ground where it begins to rise to God, and true humility will come at last to grace the mind that thought it was alone and stood against the world. Humility brings peace because it does not claim that you must rule the universe, nor judge all things as you would have them be. All little gods it gladly lays aside, not in resentment, but in honesty and recognition that they do not serve.
So I just want to point out that, we're arrogant. It talks about humility here because we're arrogant if we tell God He got us wrong. Think about that. We tell Him, oh no, I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not safe, I'm not secure, I'm not abundant. I mean, whatever your nots are, I am not. I am not, I am not, I am not. How arrogant of us to tell God that, really. He who created us, He, she, Father, Mother, God, who created us, and we're so arrogant to say, you got it wrong.
Thank goodness God has a great sense of humor. I think that's it.
Right?
Hear, hear.
And the next step is then not only do we get it wrong and we're arrogant, then we actually believe we need stuff. And then we go move a little bit beyond the needing stuff to, now I really want to forgive for needing it. And then we finally get to a point where we're like, okay, you're reflecting me, and I'm going to pray and lift this up. And then the ladder ends, and how does the ladder end? Where are we? True prayer, as just defined, where are we when the ladder ends?
One with God.
We're one with God.
At the gate of eternity.
Right. There it is.
You have recognized the
And
Christ in you.
we're communing with God. We're in the presence of God, and the ladder ends. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, yeah, we're not sure when the next workshop, you want to keep going?
Of course.
Okay. Just let us know if there's a specific topic or not. I was thinking that maybe the next one we don't know when it will be. But we might just go over some of the like really wonderful, helpful phrases that you can pick up, in the Course in Miracles. Like, I don't know my own best interests. I'm on a journey without, and just kind of maybe talk about that collectively. All right, thank you very much.
And there is the Song of Prayer. This is just the first
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
But it's it was the last thing that was written, and it's written beautifully, and it's really worth a good read through.
Yeah.
In pieces, because it's hard to,
Yeah.
for me, it's hard to take it all in at once.
Yeah, and part of we wanted to do this and actually read it because you really get a flavor for the Course. You realize it's not something you're going to pick up and just, every time you read it, you're going to, I mean, for me, and I've been at this over a decade with A Course in Miracles, and I'm like, I've never read that before. I've never seen that before.
Get some of those.
And I feel like I'm just beginning to scratch the surface. It's like, wow.
That's why this workshop is so
So they
amazingly
pretty
helpful,
wide?
because each time that reinforce a little bit by little.
Yeah, good, good, good.
Yes,
Good.
I want
Appreciate
to
that.
continue as long as you're willing.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Andy, Seb.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you.
All right.